There are some things that you can poke at. We did see, you know, so was there anything usable in this data set? I mean, we all kind of agreed in the aggregate. In the aggregate, not so much, right? But
yeah, there's definitely useful stuff.
How so?
Well, I mean, if you look at some of the companies, it seemed to be that every single person from that company was on that it was sent to. So that would lead you to assume that you got some engagement there from that company. So you could then target that company, try to figure out what you're doing with them that's making them engaged and help extrapolate that out.
I love it. Yeah, right. Because you've got some companies that are fully represented and they're in it,
Yeah.
and then others. Were there any? I can't remember. I don't know if there were any that had a 0% response rate, but very low engagement rates. There were. Okay. Yeah.
I was going to say some of the reps had much better response rates than others. So is there something about their relationship with the customer you can learn from?
I like that. So for those that didn't hear, there were some accounts, some reps that had really great response rates compared to other reps. Maybe that rep is doing something different, right? They're engaging with their customers in different ways. We can contrast these two things. Yeah?
I think you're making an assumption that response isn't mandatory and that your reps aren't going, you know, buddy, I need you to fill this out. We're doing a little contest. I gotta have this feedback. We're all having some tough times. So we like to think people don't do that. That's reality.
That is reality. Yeah, there probably is some gaming going on behind the scenes, and hopefully we've done the what's in it for them enough to the point where they can get value out of it. But you're right. We could probably always expect a certain amount of gaming to go on, especially when incentives are tied to the program, which we need to be careful with.
I guess it's what is this going to be used for too? Can you say is it valid or not? If you're just going to look at the response rates by rep, like she said, Neve, you're just seeing how many reps got people to respond to them or what the scores are. Are we looking at, is it representative by the overall financial outcome of the thing? Maybe because it's smaller companies, you had a better response rate. Smaller, you have more touch with them than big ones. So I think it really, you have to look at the data through those filters too. What are you going to be doing with this?
That's a good segue into the next slide. Which maybe you've got the slides and you kind of peeked ahead. I don't know. I will assume you didn't. Yeah. How are we going to use this data? What is the purpose, right? So, what's our objective? How are we going to go about, driving that objective? What are we aiming to achieve? Is it loyalty? Is it retention? Is it word of mouth? How are we going to translate that business result? And so we're going to start to get now into this idea of prioritizing for action. So Lightning McQueen has moved down into the second piece. We're going to talk about key drivers and expected value of action. Now, to your, it's Barbara, right?
Right.
Barbara. So Barbara was saying, how are we going to use this data? What is the context for this data? Where are we, what are we looking at? How many of you are running relationship and transactional surveys? So relationship meaning periodic overall assessment, transactional about a specific touch point. Both? There were a few hands that went up. So how many are running just transactional touch point surveys? A few? Okay. How many then just relationship surveys? Only relationship? Okay, few. Now, they're different, right? I mean, you get different feedback at different points in time. The thing we need to remember as valuable about a relationship study, though, is that it can help you understand which touch points are more important than others, because not all touch points are created equal. It does another thing that's really important, right? So we can measure in terms of the overall, each of these steps, we can understand which ones are more important than others by virtue of the key driver analysis that we're going to get into in a second. But the other part of the relationship assessment is we want to understand what the overall drivers of loyalty are, and more often than not, and I think if you were in Dr. Rhodes' session this morning, I think he was talking about this, it's an emotional connection. It's not necessarily about a specific touch point. It's about what I refer to usually as the space between. You've got touch points that are kind of handoffs. In my Delta experience, I went to the website, I booked my flight, it was a good price, right? I paid my $25 bribe for my baggage to get there. I got on the flight. I mean, there were a series of touch points. overall, how do I assess any one touch point? It's kind of hard, right? But there is an emotional connection that's kind of the space between each of these things. That space between is defined, in my experience, by our ability to understand and meet customer expectations. So the name of our game here is all about understanding what does the customer expect, and are we meeting those expectations. Now, my Delta baggage survey, for example, they asked on the survey, did the agent address you by name? Did the agent apologize for the experience? They asked all these questions, and I'm like, are you kidding me? A, I have no idea, I can't remember. B, I don't know why that's important, right? What did I expect? When I called and I talked to the agent, I expected them to tell me where my bag was and when I was going to get it, and nothing else mattered, right? So guess what question they didn't ask on that questionnaire?
Did you get the information you expected?
Was it accurate? Was the agent able to meet your expectation? Were they effective in their communication with you, right? The answer actually was no, and it wasn't the fault of the agent. I won't get into all the details. There was a series of major missteps, I'll say. I was about to say something else. And anyway, so it wasn't about individual touch points. It was about those expectations and the space between. So, and I don't know, anybody have other similar examples, either from your company or consumer example? Did you ever you have a relationship with a company that you particularly love? Anybody have a company that kind of, yeah, who?
Tempur-Pedic.
Tempur-Pedic. Oh, I love my sleep. I have a sleep number. I love it. But you use Tempur-Pedic. Different bed. But
I'm in love with that bed.
You're in love with that
bed. Everybody I get. And I only had one interaction with them when I bought the bed.
You went into the store.
Yep.
It was a good experience in the store.
I had the delivery.
Delivery. The product, I guess, is great. Meets all your expectations.
Yep.
I have one.
Yeah.
It's not a positive one. Have you ever dealt with DirecTV?
Yes.
Yes.
I have DirecTV.
And you're okay if you never have to call them, because you have to go through a multitude of different clicks to get to the person, and easily get to the wrong person, and they go to transfer you back, they click you, and you go right back to right from the beginning. But the thing that I don't like about them is when they're finished helping you, I certainly hope that I have provided you excellent and above blah, blah, blah service. What am I going to say? I just want to get off the phone. I'm done with you.
Yeah. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Are you having a great day? Yeah. Right. All these things you just want out. So you're calling. You have a specific problem that you needed help with, right? Did they ask? Maybe some of them actually, I think, have asked, "Did we solve your problem?" I don't know. In your experience, Sister DirecTV asked, "Did we solve your problem?"
And the fact that you have to repeat yourself multiple times the same information, and you say, "I just gave that to 3 other agents I just spoke with." Well, I'm sorry, ma'am, I don't have it here in front of me, and I need to have it. You're just like.
So hold on one sec, Susan. I think you were raising your hand, right? So you have expectations. Those expectations are set not by DirecTV, not
Correct.
by their competitors, but they're set by other experiences you have with other companies. Those expectations are, you've got my data in the system, you know who I am, you know something about me, and you know what, I have that expectation because I shop on Amazon, or I have that expectation because I work with some other company that has a good process for it and it works. So you've got expectations. Now, DirecTV needs to understand what those expectations of the customer are and where they fall short. Susan? Yep.
Well, I was just going to say, I just bought a new 4S iPhone, which is an Apple product. I'm really excited for the Apple Store, but ended up having to go to the AT&T store. It's my plan. I have my husband and I have it. And when I was interacting with the woman, she actually won while I was buying. She was actually yawning, like I was sort of ruining her day. And I was sort of locked into having to deal with AT&T, otherwise I would have probably not dealt with them. So, you know, it's one of those things where Apple probably doesn't know the reputation now they're going to have with AT&T. You know what I mean? Because Apple is an amazing job.
Right, Apple has an amazing product, but
But
AT&T
now,
needs
my
a
experience with that, you know, getting this Apple product was not. So party.
And why do you say that? You say it, not so stellar. You have expectations that were set by what? Where are they not meeting your expectation?
In that I matter as a customer.
So it's
Yeah,
sort of an emotion. It's a
Yeah.
treatment.
Yeah, like she could care, I was in her, she was
Right.
tired, I was in her way.
Well, I have an example of an excellent customer experience. So my dad was like many dads, getting old and needing help, and we needed to put him in a nursing facility for a while. So I went to visit my dad, and he seemed really lonely. So I said, Dad, how about I get you one of those TV DVD things, and we can get you some World War II CDs, and you can enjoy that. He said, well, maybe that'd be fine. So I go home to California, and he's in Florida. I get onto the Best Buy website, and I ship him one of those little televisions. So it shows up in his room in a television box. When he opens it up, it's some kind of a roof antenna, or it's something else. So of course they had the wrong thing in the box. So I call Best Buy, and I explained to them the situation. They go, well, first of all, they were kind of denying it, that, well, it must have been a mistake on your end. And I go, oh no, it wasn't a mistake on my end. And then they go through their return policy about how I need to pack it up and take it to my UPS store. And I go, wait a minute, guys, you don't understand. I live in California, he lives in Florida. He's 86 years old, my mom is 84. They can't do this. I can't expect the staff to do this. The person on the phone, when she heard that story, she says, oh, she says, I will take care of it. We will send somebody there to pack it up and have the UPS man take care of it, and then we'll ship you a television. So that was just, again, I didn't have to talk to a supervisor. I didn't have to go beyond the person who was on the phone with me, and they basically took care of it.
So they exceeded your expectations.
Exceeded my expectations.
Right.
They actually arranged for somebody to come in, to pack it up, and ship it, and then ship the right product.
Yeah, so
That's unbelievable, right?
I mean, so there's this understanding of expectations versus actual delivery. It's a complex set of interactions. We can't always design for every situation, but we can empower frontline folks to be able to do the right thing, and it's part of that overall culture. So some touch points, right? You definitely want to establish what touch points are more important than others, but you also want to measure the space between, which are things like, are they helping me be successful in whatever it was that I was looking to do? Do I feel that there's value for cost? Am I getting the value that I expected? Are these guys easy to do business with, right? Just generally speaking. Is there good quality? Is every, the interactions I'm having, generally of the right expectation? And those are some of the emotional kind of attributes that you probably want to measure in terms of that space between, in terms of overall loyalty. Now, let's get into a little bit of, some of the analytics behind it. We're going to talk about a couple of different statistical methods to start to be able to report out the results. The first one is just histograms. How many times is this thing occurring? Text analytics, is anybody using text analytics to actually, or text analysis in any way, whether it's manual or automated, to sort of categorize comments? Yeah? Yeah, okay, many. So what are you able to do, right? You can kind of create a count. You can see how frequently a certain thing is happening. That's good. That's good. It's missing a few things though, the histogram. So I call it, we're in Vegas, so I call that our two pair hand, right? It's our two pair hand. It's like, okay, it's better than just a pair. We have some histograms, that's good. We get certain insights, but we're missing something. What are we missing? We're missing root causes. We're also missing kind of how important is this, right? We know how frequently it's occurring, but we don't know how important it is. Let me ask a question. Everybody flew out here? Who wants to volunteer? So when you flew out, when you bought your ticket, what was the most important thing in that decision of when you bought your ticket?
Time.
Cost?
Times.
Times? Oh, flight times. The schedule? Cost, schedule? Okay, yeah, total, yeah, non-stop, right? Anything else? Boy, nobody was looking at the airline's safety record? Isn't that important?
Very.
Yes.
Yeah. But we don't think about it. And so if you ask a customer directly how important is the safety record, they're going to say, yeah, it's freaking important, but it's, yeah, it's the single most important thing. When it comes right down to it, do you make any buying decisions based on that? No. So, you know, stated important, when you ask the question, it's leading, right? It's very misrepresentative. You're not going to get good data that way through stated importance. And then the flip side of it is just counting the frequency of, you know, the number of times that something happens. Does that necessarily imply that it's the most important thing, that it's going to affect those buying decisions, going to affect loyalty? Not necessarily, right? So that's why I call this our two-pair hand, right? We start to get a start, we get a sniff test, we get some ideas of where to start to go look. The next place is this Pearson correlation. This is built into Allegiance. I mean, histograms are built into every survey, even SurveyMonkey does histograms, right? Allegiance will take it one step further with Pearson correlation, which essentially will tell you how related are these two items, right? So if we ask, how easy are we to do business with on a scale of 0 to 10? How do how well do you think our quality is on a scale of 0 to 10? You know, a series of questions, and if we can get enough data, you can see, you know, how correlated are these two attributes? How related are they? Are they highly related, or are they not highly related? And, you know, the general rule of thumb, we kind of say anything with a 0.4 or higher, 40%. The correlation can go from -1, which means completely, you know, in the opposite direction, to +1, which means these things move in perfect harmony together. I'm trying to think of some examples. Bees and pollen move in pretty good unison, but bees and ice cubes move in opposite directions. So the correlation will tell you kind of how related those things are. Bees are not at all related to ice cubes, highly related to pollen. Okay, right? So you can start to get some idea. And, you know, 0.4 or higher is what we would kind of generally say, you know, there's really something here to this thing. Not to say that lower numbers might not be important also to look like, but that's kind of where we draw the line. The next, you know, now our full house. A little bit more sophisticated technique. Our full house play here is the partial regression, which also is embedded in the Allegiance platform. Is anybody using this tool today? The partial regression tool inside Allegiance? No? Is anybody doing partial regressions outside of Allegiance? Or yes? Well, you're a statistician,
yeah.
So right. So partial regressions will tell you relative impact, which means not just are these two things related, but what is more likely to move the needle? What are the things that we really think are, you know, so we're talking about importance. And again, we're defining importance in a series of, you know, kind of steps. Histograms, maybe something with the taller bar indicates that it's more important. You know, Pearson correlation shows the relationship between these two things. Maybe that, you know, that helps us get a little bit more in terms of the importance. Partial regression shows this relative impact. You know, so if somebody's loyal, right, we can come up with a regression coefficient that would tell us this touch point, say the product, is more important than this other touch point, right, which might be service, which is to say, if we can improve the product experience by some percentage points, then we are more likely to improve overall loyalty, right? And we can start to build a predictive model in terms of how much are we going to move the needle. Now, the Allegiance platform has this embedded in as well. And again, it helps us zero in on what areas we want to focus on. The most, you know, more sophisticated techniques are done in tools like SPSS or SAS or some of these other tools. You know, linear regression, there's nonlinear regression as well, which I'm not even going to talk about. But those are the kinds of things actually where you want to start to engage some statisticians, because that's where you can actually start to predict the ROI. So partial regression is interesting because you will get, you know, this part of the product experience is most likely to improve overall customer loyalty. Or this, individual, which touch points are more important, which aspects of those touch points, which are more likely to move the needle. Linear regression will help you establish a prediction, which is to say, well, if we know that our typical promoter for this portfolio, let's say Eastern region customers that bought product A, they are worth on average $100,000. Promoters are worth $150,000. Detractors are worth $50,000. You can establish all this stuff, right? You can look at the average value for each of these segments and kind of get a rule of thumb about where those differential values are. And I'm going to talk more about the financial linkage in a second. Then you can say, well, if we can move our detractors to become more promoters, or move our passives to become more promoters, if we can improve the percentage of loyal customers by some percent, by say, 10%, how much more money are we going to get? Right? And then you can start to establish the ROI. So, because the business, again, they want to make business decisions. We're going to tell them, you know what, in order to make more happy, loyal customers, we've got to change our staffing on our support line from 80% every 20 seconds to be 98% in 40 seconds. And your VP of service is going to say, you know what, we ran the model, in order to do that, that's going to cost us $20 million. We can't afford it. With this sort of analysis, you can start to, well, obviously you'd want to run a pilot before you start to spend $20 million and do it in a significant way. But even before running the pilot, you can model using the statistical technique and show them, well, yeah, it might cost you $20 million, but we see that that's going to create 40% more loyal customers. On average, our loyal customers are worth 3 times that of our non-loyal customers. That's worth $80 million. So therefore, and by the way, I saw this done in real world results with, not with DirecTV, but a competitor of DirecTV that understood that the DVR, those TiVo thing, right, the digital video recorders, those customers that had DVRs were more loyal. They were more likely to stick around. It was a better experience. They were gave higher scores, they spent more. So they wanted to make the case that we should give away DVRs to everybody. Pretty expensive proposition. And they had to do this kind of a model, and then they was see, is a 4-to-1 ROI enough? Maybe not. Maybe we can't justify giving away DVRs based on 4-to-1 ROI. Maybe we were looking for a 10-to-1 ROI. But at least the executive can have a little bit more decision-making capability. We have another client who, they're in a software business. Their business is so marked by turnover that they are trying to make the case that training should be given away for free. Because they're trying to make loyal customers. They want to make the case that training should be given away. But training is a big revenue center for them. So are they going to, so where's that trade-off? Now every company is a little bit different. The math on these is a little bit different. But again, you probably want to start to be able to analyze, again, those cost-benefit analyses. Don't just look at, well, we can move our scores from X to Y. Instead, let's try to translate the discussion into, we're going to move our run rate from $20 million to $40 million, and we only have to invest X number of dollars to do it. Right? That's where I think we get a little bit more interesting. Any thoughts or questions on this? We're going to get into a little more key driver. There's obviously, we could spend a whole day on this slide, on these topics. We don't have time, but hopefully we've kind of scratched the surface on some of those techniques. Questions? Okay, so getting into some of the specifics in the key driver analysis. The Allegiance platform will provide this out of the box. Essentially, what do we want to do? We want to measure performance of any given attribute, any given part of the customer experience. And we want to plot that against, how important is it? And if you're using some of those techniques I was talking about, the percent gain, which is that regression technique where we can predict the future, how much do we think we have? And you can just, this is a simple visual on where you might establish focal areas. Now, here's the trick, in my opinion. The trick is, don't just focus here. These are things that, the roof is on fire, but leverage and expand, right? What are you doing well? I see so many programs where it's all about low score follow-up, or it's all about converting detractors, or it's all about moving those scores up. You've got an amazing asset in your promoters, those customers who love you. Engage them, leverage them, understand from them what they love, what you're doing well, and how you're meeting their expectations. Then go to these guys and contrast that. Where are you falling short? What are the expectations they have? Right? What do you need to do better? And then you start to get a clear roadmap, right, of where you can really focus. One chart on its own really isn't going to do it. So we've got a series of touch points, right? Whether it's sales, installation, for your business, you've got kind of those touch points that matter. Then you've also got those emotional attributes that I was talking about before. Value, quality, ease, success, those are some of them. I happen to really like this idea of measuring customer success in terms of the customer's terms. That was a mouthful. How do your customers know if they will be successful in working with you as a vendor? Anybody have an answer to that? How does a customer know if they're successful? I want to continue working with you because you help me be successful. How do I define that? Yeah.
Pay them.
We pay them, yeah, but at the end of the day, are they help? So should I stick with these guys or should I go somewhere else? Well, there's that emotional connection. Are they helping me be successful? I could measure, maybe I measure success if I'm B2B, like, you know what, I implemented this program, these guys really helped me, and I got promoted. That could be one measure of success. Another measure of success, a lot of software companies will measure their success or try to measure success by their customers improving revenue. So if I'm a Salesforce.com, for example, they should really be measuring, are their customers able to generate more revenue as a result of using Salesforce.com? Right? They don't do that. And and we can kind of see it, right? I mean, how many people are in love with their CRM system? Is anybody in love with their CRM system? Who doesn't love their CRM system? So now if that vendor cared enough about your success, they'd probably want to do something about it. Now how you define success probably varies quite a lot from person to person. It's their job to understand how their customers are defining success. You probably want to find that out. How are your customers thinking about success? That's the ultimate, in my opinion. That's the ultimate in kind of that emotional connection. I love working with vendor X because I got promoted. They helped me get promoted. Or I love working with these guys because I know that they are going to take the best care of my loved ones. That every time I go in there, I just know that they're in great hands, right? I mean, whatever that connection is, it's separate from the touch points, but they're related, right? So make sure that you're kind of measuring on both of those dimensions. And then the other thing you want to do is back to our definition of trustworthy data. How much is explained by your model? And without getting into too much of the statistics, you want to look at your p-value, which will show, essentially your how correlated are these things and your margin of error. Your adjusted R-square again. I mean, without getting into the statistical kind of background, there are some numbers behind this which can kind of give you some confidence in the amount of, the level of the recommendation. So when you go to your executive staff and you say, look, I ran the numbers, seems to be an opportunity here, there's a gap, we've identified the root cause, our customers are expecting us to do this, we're falling short, we think we can generate more promoters, and it's kind of this range. At least now they can make some educated decisions, and it's not just the I think. They're not just making hippo-based decisions. Questions? That's a little bit on key driver analysis. Is anybody using survey, feedback, voice of customer platform that kind of does this for them, like Allegiance? Is anybody using Allegiance? Yeah? Are you doing this inside the Allegiance tool or some of it?
Well, we just launched last Tuesday, so we're building up some data as we are now. But,
okay.
Next couple of weeks, we'll start doing some reports.
You're using it as well, and you're able to get it to show you some of these things?
We haven't really connected it to the ops and the financial data yet, but we're, it's still sort of siloed. you know, but that's going to be the next step, once we get the data out and find out where we are, to really look at, should we put the resources in, and then, you know, the whole financial piece, how it might impact financial.
Right, okay. Well, so the, you know, the software can help you, but you still need to guide it, and right, filter it in, bring that view. Yeah. Now, this whole time on this last couple of slides, we've been talking about our respondents, right? What about our non-respondents? Don't forget them. So we always will say there's 4 groups of customers. There are 4 groups of customers that we'll always model, that we always take a look at. And at the simplest terms, you can break it into those that are with you and those that are not with you. Those that are with you are your promoters, right? People that give you high scores, they love you, they're highly engaged, great, they're with you. Unfortunately, you've got three categories of folks that are not with you. Detractors, which are a cry for help. They're saying, help me please, I want to love you, but I'm stuck here, right? You got your passives, which are kind of the middle of the road. These are probably the hardest group to convince because they've got a high expectation that you may never meet, or right, for some reason they're just like middle of the road, and are you ever going to be able to please them? Don't know. Got to reach out to them. And then your third group are the non-responders, the people who are totally disengaged and checked out. And so you want to model your responders versus your non-responders. If you're in B2C, this is a little bit easier to do because you can, in B2C organizations, you've probably got a very rich database of all kinds of demographic, psychographic kind of information about your customers. You know where they are, you know what products they've bought, maybe you know how old they are, maybe you know if they're male or female, maybe you know household income, maybe because you know their address, you know something about the neighborhood they live in. I mean, so you can start to look for clumps of where do we have high responders and where do we have non-responders. Look for those differences, right? So model your responders versus non-responders. Now in B2B, the relationship is generally established by the account manager. So modeling your respondents basically means which account managers have good coverage and response and which account managers do not have good coverage and response, right? And then you want to start to look for differences. Maybe those account managers are new. Maybe they are incented in some other way, right? Whatever it is, like look for those differences. Now, yeah, I love this, right? Excellent health statistics. Smokers are less likely to die of age-related illnesses. Is there anybody from the tobacco industry in the room? So, you know, so no duh, right? I mean, it's look at those differences. What actually, you know, is causing this? What are the relationships between these two things? And measure your response versus your non-response. I tell you, that's going to give you probably more insight than just looking at low scores, right? If you can look at who's engaged in responding versus who's not, and start to pick up the phone, make some phone calls, find out why they responded or didn't respond, what are their expectations, let's go talk to these people. Start to get a better sense of what's going on. And you know what, usually, you know, it's kind of the rule of 3. Talk to 3 detractors or 3 non-responders or 3 promoters. You'll find some trends pretty quickly, right? Depending on, if your questioning is targeted based on what you're seeing in the data set, you'll 9 calls, 3 different groups. How long will 9 calls take? Not too long. And the insight you'll gain is tremendous. So just kind of, my advice, surveys are at the start, not the end. Anyway, this is all about non-respondent adjusting, and there's again some more statistical techniques. In the interest of time, I think we're going to move on. Let's talk about financial linkage. This is a fun topic. I showed this example earlier where we've got engaged customer response rate, response rate and the renewal rate, non-response and renewal rate. What are some of the other ways that you might be able to measure financial impact? Right? So we want to tell a business story.
How about the expense against it?
So like cost to serve,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, you could measure SG&A, your sales general administrative expense, per customer.
Yeah.
Let's say
And it was truck rolls.
truck
How
rolls.
many times it took a customer to be seen by a service person before they got right?
Okay, and I'll bet that the more truck rolls it took, the more unhappy they were, right? They move in the opposite direction. We generally find that promoters are less costly to serve than detractors, whether you're B2B or B2C. So that definitely could be a metric to look at. Yeah. What else? What are some of the other metrics?
So we try to look at across all of our products, how many products do they have installed? How much services are they using for us to go along with that?
I like that, right? So we've got some set of customers, more loyal customers should be buying more from us. We saw a client once that was upside down, where promoters actually were spending less on average than their detractors. And they were like scratching their heads saying, what's going on? Why is this? And we said, yeah, why is this? You guys are just like, you've got an incredible opportunity just staring at you. Pick up the phone and go call those promoters, generate a marketing campaign, make sure they know about the additional products that you can sell them. They love you, they want to buy more, right? So cross-sell is another big opportunity. What else is a good way to measure, or what else are you doing inside your businesses to be able to measure financial impact? We talked about cost to serve, cross-sell.
Repeat business.
Renewals, and yeah, so retention. Is anybody doing sort of a customer lifetime value assessment? Does anybody have, those can get pretty complex and pretty sophisticated, but back of the envelope, customer lifetime value? Anybody doing anything like that? So that's something you could look at, that promoters are probably, they're going to stay with you longer. So let's, again, holding all things equal, let's look at those differences. Yeah.
You can also look at account penetration. So you may have a very active site or a very active region of a large account, but not across the board.
I love it.
There's opportunity there.
Right. There's opportunity there. If you've got a mega account and maybe you're only in one particular part of the organization, you've got a lot of promoters who love you. What a great opportunity. Leverage those promoters to get you introduced to other parts of the business and expand your footprint, expand your influence in that account. Your promoters are so valuable, they can do all kinds of great things. And any others? I mean, point is there's a lot of ways that we can measure the financial connection between promoters versus detractors. I mean, so this is just looking at, for those portfolios, detractors versus promoters, low scores versus high scores, what's the average value in a particular apples to apples comparison. Just make sure that you're, again, comparing apples to apples. If if you're comparing tier 1 accounts against, tier 3 accounts, obviously not going to be good, but group them and you can establish that value. And then from there, we've established, in this case, there's a 1.9x difference between the happy customers and the unhappy customers. So the name of the game is let's move them to the right. We want to create more promoters because we think we can generate, twice the revenue essentially. And that gets us here. There's a number of treatment strategies that we're going to want to start to apply. Don't forget about your promoters. Don't forget about the people who love you, right? You want to activate them. You want to start, engage them. We say activate. What percentage of those promoters are promoting? Does anybody have a handle on that in their business? So, right, what a great opportunity for a really successful marketing campaign. Instead of going out to the masses with a new product opportunity, why not go to your promoters first with a new product opportunity and start to generate a lot of buzz instead of going out to the masses where you might generate a lot of unhappy, bad will. Engage those promoters. You can pick up the phone and you can talk to them, or you could run a small questionnaire. Have you referred us? How often have you referred us? Who are you referring us to? Again, they love you. They want to talk to you. Right? They'll be so thrilled if you pick up the phone and call them. And they'd be happy to answer these questions. In my experience, I've never had, if somebody takes the time to fill out the survey, gives you a 9 or a 10 on this recommend question or whatever it is you're using, they're going to pick up the phone, they're going to be delighted to hear from you, and they'll be happy to talk to you more about these referrals. Look at those cross-sell opportunities. What can you do if you can increase average customer value by 10%? You got promoters. If 80% of your business are promoters, boy, that's a great opportunity. If we can increase the average value by 10%, that could be a hell of a lot of money. So instead of thinking about a strategy where you might introduce, go out to whole new market segments, whole new business areas, maybe we want to just create another product that we're going to sell into our promoters. Passives. Why are they holding back? Reach out to them, understand, what do we need to do? Right? Where's that gap in expectations? Maybe they'll say, yeah, this is just how I rate everybody, which might mean, okay, you haven't done anything to kind of deserve it. But in Jeanette's example about Best Buy, that was a pretty cool example where you could, really deliver a wow experience. But I'll tell you this, you don't always have to deliver wow experiences. In my findings, 9 times out of 10, picking up the phone and calling those guys, you've already made them a promoter. You don't even have to do anything. You just made them a promoter. You got to listen, ask them a couple of thoughtful questions. You'll show them they care. That's a differentiated experience right there. Don't you love when you go to the hotel and they have those cards and they say, we care about your experience, we want to know, right? And you fill out the response card and they never get back to you. They don't care. It's just a number. So give them a call. Detractors, right? Again, we're looking at the difference between detractors versus promoters. So look at the loss rate. How much are we losing because of detractors? Now you could get fancy and you could look at the softer benefits, the negative word of mouth. We've all read product reviews. You're on Amazon or wherever it may, eBay, whatever. Does anybody read those product reviews? I do. Does it influence your buying decision?
Absolutely.
And same in B2B. So we're in a room right here at an Allegiance conference. I'd be willing to guess that you guys have been talking about Allegiance. Right? I bet you've been telling secrets. I don't know if the experiences are good or bad. I would hope for Allegiance's sake that they're good. But this is where most of the decision influence really happens. In B2B, it's these kinds of networking birds of a feather opportunities. So, what's the loss rate? If you've got an N number of detractors that have spoken to 50 customers, look, I stood up and I said, I love Delta. Now, what if I stood up and I said, I hate Allegiance, which I don't. I love Allegiance. Actually, I think they have a solid product. But if I stood up here and said, I'm one guy who's now got a microphone and lots of people, can really influence things in that way, you can calculate that. And then those non-responders, right, let's engage them. How much money are they worth? Usually, that's the lion's share of the revenue, because usually response rates are lower than the lion's share, right? The response rates from that group. What kind of response rates are you guys seeing from some of your programs? Too early to tell, I think.
Yeah.
Pretty new. Anybody?
We've got about 80%.
80%, that's
huge.
Fabulous. Tell us about your business and how, what do you attribute that to?
So we're a healthcare software company, and we only have about 350 clients, even though most of the insurance people, more than 50% of the insurance people in the U.S. actually run through our software, but it's not a huge industry. So I factor that into actually building the relationships that we've built out there. Our account reps really building those relationships.
So the account reps you think are moving the needle?
I think they're influencing a lot.
And that can help management justify the investment in account management.
But it
right?
also makes me question, for some of the years past, it was the account reps that supplied the names of who you're going to send it to. So it makes you question, are they really giving you everything they should be giving?
So do you have good coverage? We would want to measure that.
We need to take a better look at that.
We need to look at the contacts that are being included in there. And it's B2B, healthcare software, you said. So a lot of times we'll look at kind of 3x3 model,
Yeah.
where, right? You have three project managers or end users, 3 key influencers, 3 decision makers. Because usually for that kind of stuff, they're really complex decisions. You should have that kind of coverage. You can easily measure that and see what account reps are doing well versus the others.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we've talked about prioritizing for action. We've talked about establishing key drivers, get into that financial linkage, understanding not just the cost of the improvement, but the potential upside for that improvement, and giving the business executive a more complete picture. Notice in all this, we've never talked about scores. We've never talked about, like averages or, and all we've talked about really throughout this discussion is how strong are our customer relationships, where do we have opportunities to capitalize on those strengths, or where do we have opportunities to improve those strengths, and how much money is it going to be to the business. Now we need to move to the next phase, which is getting to root cause. We've gotten symptoms from our survey. We haven't gotten root cause. Has anyone been through kind of root cause training or any of these Six Sigma courses? Yep. A couple. So we're going to do kind of a crash course in root cause. It's a little bit more involved, and then we're going to take a break because I know it's a long day, right? Is anybody feeling like I need a break right now, or should we go through the next section and then take a break? We want to take a break now? Let's take a break right now. Actually, I'm feeling like so. It's 3:25. Can we take, say, 7 minutes at 3:32 and start up again? Okay. See you in 7 minutes.
I went down there before.
What, check out?
No, I checked out before, but I had stored my luggage at the bell counter, and they got lines of 20 people long.
That's where I was doing that.
Just drop mine out there.
Yeah.